The purest of souls lures fiends into a hellish trap. Today, we talk about the path of the devils. Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Bob. We're going to talk about the Path of the Devils today from the Descent into Avernus campaign from Wizards of the Coast. I've already talked about how to improvise on this path and make this actually a more well-rounded adventure, especially the Avernus chapter. You can check out that video up there. And if you want to check out how exactly I did the Path of the Demons, well, I did a video on that as well, and that'll be up in the corner too. The first encounter on the Path of the Devils is called the Demon Zapper. When the characters approach this location, they'll see radiant light cascading from a rusted metal monument. The monument is shaped like the raised mandibles of a giant beetle. Within, you can see a unicorn. The unicorn's name is actually Mooncolor, who is trapped inside of this 10-foot diameter sphere of magical force, and it blocks any spells or magic cast into or out of it. The sphere is suspended between the Zapper's spines, 50 feet above the ground. The light lures demons in like a moth to the flame. If a fiend does come within 100 feet of it, it discharges a beam of radiant energy. It's 5 feet wide and 100 feet long and extends to the target. Any creatures in that line suffer instant death if they have less than 100 hit points. However, if they have more than that, then they're going to make a DC 18 dexterity saving throw or take 260 radiant damage on a failed save, half as much on a successful one. Once the Demon Zapper is fired, it recharges in 1 minute. In order to free the unicorn, the characters need to destroy this metal structure around the Demon Zapper. It's got a lump of hit points, 250 hit points, an armor class of 14. It's immune to poison and psychic damage, and the structure will crumble when it hits 0. It says here that Mooncolor will actually accompany the party after they free it, and it's a relatively good being, but again, lots of NPCs in this game already. I would advise against having a unicorn join the group. Now, this all gets complicated by a Dao named Ralzala. Ralzala defends the Demon Zapper. Ralzala swore loyalty to Zariel to gain revenge against a rival Dao who tried to ruin her. The Dao regrets the arrangement and ultimately wants to break her pact with the Archdevil. Ralzala hides behind the base of the Zapper, and if the characters begin to damage the Zapper, she will appear from the ground and cast tongues and then offer them a deal. Ultimately, she wants to oppose the Archdevil, so she suggests hiring Bel, who would aid the characters in overthrowing Zariel. If the characters help Ralzala break her pact, then the Dao promises to direct them to Bel's forge and write them a letter of introduction. Ralzala tells the party to head to a woman named Red Ruth, a hag, who could surely divine the solution to her problem. Being bound to the Demon Zapper, Ralzala is unable to seek out this oracle herself, but the characters could do so in her stead. This leads the players ultimately to a place called the Bone Brambles. The Bone Brambles. Now, this is a location that actually gets a keyed map, so we'll take a look at the map now. It's not that many locations, though, even despite it being a maze. There's only 3 actual keyed locations. Ultimately, the Bramble is a maze of warped trees and bone-like vines that stretches before you. There are calcified corpses that merge with the trees, covered in fungal pods that feed on the blood oozing through the undergrowth. Here and there are narrow paths wind deeper into the wood. Red Ruth, the Night Hag, corrupted a community of dryads by fouling the roots of their trees with mind-bending poison. As the dryads fell to the evil, their forest was wrenched from the Feywild into Avernus. Those dryads who resisted the poison died trying to merge back into their trees. The rest crumbled to ash and became restless, tortured spirits akin to banshees. Contented, Red Ruth made her home at the heart of the Twisted Wood. Area B1. Characters who encircled the tangled stretch of woods uncover 5 separate paths to lead into the interior. According to the book, characters can avoid getting lost in the woods. A character must succeed on a DC 15 Wisdom Survival check, and on a success, the characters can locate Red Ruth's lair at the heart of the woodland. But I wouldn't necessarily just say, make the check and then they know which way to go. Going through the maze, actually exploring it, could be quite fun. So maybe you can have them pick the right entrance if they get the correct wisdom score. But if they don't beat that check, then have them just pick one randomly and move on with their decision. B2 is the dead ends. This is basically the random encounters that they could face inside the Brambles. If characters do come to a dead end or get lost, then they could end up rolling on this D4 table. The first result is a dead traveler. The corpse of a drow rests at the end of the path, her flesh impaled by hungry vines and her face twisted in an expression of horror. The traveler wears a bag of devouring on a strap. The second result is dryad spirits. 3 cursed dryad spirits approach the characters and demand to be reminded of the wonders of life. This is a fun little roleplay moment. At your discretion, you can have the characters describe a wonder of life. It could be some beautiful memory that they had, an image they've seen, something, anything really. And as long as that satisfies the beauty of life, at your discretion, you can let the spirits kind of be good and move on. But if not, the spirits will attack. The Dryad spirits are pretty much like ghosts or the Banshee entry in the Monster Manual. They have a whale attack that can deplete people's HP. Number 3 is Shambling Mounds. 3 Shambling Mounds will pop out of the Brambles and attack. This can be actually quite an annoying combat, so be careful if you do end up getting this. Shambling Mounds aren't that hard to beat. Their AC, I think, is 14 or something like that. And they have a ton of hit points, 130 something hit points. So they just can be a nuisance, and they'll take forever for your party to beat. Even a pretty decent 8th level group will have a hard time chewing through all those hit points unless they're a very optimized group. And that can just kind of slow this whole thing down. I might consider having the hit points, but maybe doubling the damage that they do, or at least adding a dice to the damage rolls, just making them a little bit more impactful and then speeding up the process. They're a very straightforward type of enemy. They'll attack with their vines, and if they hit, they'll engulf somebody. But it's kind of rare. They don't have that great of an attack roll, so it could just be a bag of hit points for your characters to beat on for some time. And number 4 is a Thorn Trap. Now, this trap's actually kind of hard to understand. I've read it over and over again, but basically it's a 15-foot deep thicket of thorns. It's not something the characters don't see. They actually do see it. Each 5-foot square of the section of thorns counts as difficult terrain and has an AC 11 with 15 hit points. It's immune to psychic damage and vulnerable to fire. If it's damaged but not destroyed, it'll regrow, basically, in 24 hours. The thorns restrain any characters who end their turns within 5 feet of them, and any creature that starts its turn restrained by the thorns takes 22 or 40-10 slashing damage from writhing barbs. Once a creature is entangled, it can break free only if all the thorn bushes within 5 feet of it are destroyed. There is a hawthorn staff entangled at the end of the path. This is just a decoy, and it crumbles to ash in the hands of whoever claims it. So it might look like it's a wand or a staff or something important, and the characters want to go grab it, but the thorn trap is there. If your characters can fly or hover or jump really far, they could probably just avoid this trap entirely. I'm kind of against it. I feels like the trap should be something hidden and perhaps discovered or came upon, or something that would be more exciting than just a thing that characters don't want to go into. After all the random encounters, you get to B3 Red Ruth's lair. A cave-like hovel lies at the center of the maze. Hundreds of bones and body parts hang from twine at the entrance, and the ceiling is strung with garland made of bloody entrails. The air buzzes with flies. Red Ruth is a night hag, and this is her lair. When the adventurers arrive, Red Ruth is going to offer them some things. She does offer poisons, potions that she creates from blood. For 1 soul coin, she'll give a common or uncommon potion. For 2 soul coins, a rare potion. And for 3 soul coins, she can use the commune spell, although Red Ruth provides answers to the questions without needing to appeal to a divine being. If the characters treat Red Ruth with respect, she says that she knows how to free Ralzala from the pact that she made, but she won't tell the characters until they performed a favor for her first. The hag explains that she's long overdue for a bath. It's been a couple of centuries at the very least since she's washed, so she wants them to arrange for a pampering session at the Infernal Rapture, a location in the Wandering Emporium. More to come on that in another video. When she goes to get her bath, they must watch over the grove while she's gone. If characters decide to attack or threaten Red Ruth, then she'll just slip away into the ethereal plane and won't return until they leave. The Night Hag can divine the location of the Emporium by spilling some of her own blood on the ground and studying the pattern. The Wandering Emporium is one of those encounters that will just show up at your discretion, but you can make this show up a bit earlier with Red Ruth's prediction. If the characters decide to take on this task, they will go to the Wandering Emporium, they'll set up an appointment for her, and then head back to the Brambles to guard her fort. While the hag is away for a few hours to take her bath, the cursed spirits of the Dryads will arise to destroy Red Ruth's lair as punishment for her crimes. 2 Dryad spirits and a walking undead tree will attack. Now this is actually kind of an annoying combat for the party, assuming that they maybe had some other random encounters before this. 2 Dryad spirits can both use their wail to bring down people. I mean, a DC 12 Constitution check, or they drop to 0 hit points, is actually quite frightening. So with that combination of 2 of them and the tree, which does hit pretty hard, this can be a pretty deadly encounter. So make sure the characters have a chance to rest, at the very least a short rest before this combat. The Dryad spirits don't have any treasure, but the tree has a dead gnome skeleton lodged in a hollow cavity in its trunk. The skeleton wears a witch's hat, which is actually a hat of disguise, and it clutches a +1 wand of the War Mage. When Ruth returns, she reveals that the Ralzala must drink the blood of a titan to free herself from Zariel's pact. The Night Hag says that Uldrak might be able to help, but warns that he's not what he used to be. If the characters show her their map, she identifies Uldrak's location and sends the group to Uldrak's grave. Uldrak's grave. Uldrak is an Empyrean. He quested into the Nine Hells to slay Tiamat and win glory for his deity, Surtur, but he was beaten handily by the Dragon Queen. Instead of being slain, Tiamat cursed him and transformed him into a spine devil. This creature now lives inside the helmet that he once wore. For millennia, he's dwelled in this spot, forlornly plotting to restore his true form. Another classic fetch quest here. Uldrak is a bitter creature. He wants to get back at Zariel for what she's done to him, so he will try to help the group, and in return, he wants them to return him to his true form. Uldrak will reveal his sad tale and tell the characters that he needs blood of Tiamat. If he gets the blood of Tiamat and it's spilled onto the Avernus ground, he will transform back into his Imperium form and ultimately fight her again one day. He has a sword. Uldrak's sword has a orb in its pommel. It's called the Orb of Dragonkind. This will be vital in freeing himself. He says there's a person named Arkhan the Cruel, someone who worships Tiamat. He carries a vial of Tiamat's blood around his neck at all times. Uldrak wants the characters to take the Orb of Dragonkind and exchange it. See if he will go for that bargain. If he does exchange it and the characters get the blood of Tiamat, they'll bring that blood back and make Uldrak back into the Empyrean he once was. Uldrak gives them directions to where Arkhan's tower is located. Arkhan's tower. Arkhan is a really cool character. He's created by the famed D&D personality Joe Manganiello. He portrayed this character in Critical Role's first season, and it was a big hit with the fans. Now, it's always tricky when you try to incorporate something that was a fan creation into an official module, but it does fit in pretty well with the setting of Descent into Avernus because Tiamat, the five-headed dragon queen, is imprisoned here in the first level of the Nine Hells. Arkhan and his crew, which we'll learn about in a bit, they want to free Tiamat, and ultimately they're working towards that goal by raising a dragon horde army. When the characters arrive at Arkhan's tower, they'll see the tower looms in the horizon, its black spire rising hundreds of feet in the air, its ramparts bristling with charred skulls mounted on iron spikes. The tower's apex splits into 5 narrower spires that jab into the sky like clawed fingers. Circling above the tower's peak is a great white dragon stained with ash and soot. When the characters get closer, they'll notice figures shuffling atop its ramparts, undead guards in various states of decay. Arkhan has a crew with him. One of the crew members is named Krull. He's a turtle death priest, and he's here watching over the tower with all of these undead guards. Arkhan has traveled to a nearby monument to commune with his goddess, leaving Krull behind. Right now, he has 50 skeletons and 30 zombies standing watch at the tower. In addition to its undead defenses, the tower has 4 smaller dragons living within inside it, a young black dragon, green dragon, blue dragon, and red dragon wormling. This is a really difficult place to assault, and there really is no reason to, so they kind of just say, listen, you're not really going into this tower. It's just, it's too well defended. The goal here is not to fight Krull. It's more to be taken to where Arkhan is, and really just get the players to the Monument of Tiamat. Krull will hear the plight of the heroes, and because they oppose Zariel, will decide to take the characters all the way to the monument so that they can meet up with Arkhan. Now let's move on to the Monument of Tiamat. When the players arrive at this location, they'll see a colossal dragon skull leaning against a mountainside, surrounded by bones the size of houses. Acrid smoke rises from the skull's maw. A military tent has been pitched among the bones, and parked next to it is a 2-wheeled infernal war machine. Gathered around its tent are a dozen chattering reptilian humanoids with gleaming swords, white scales, and white, leathery wings. These creatures are white Abishai. They're only CR6, have 68 hit points, an AC of 15, and most likely are going to do one of 2 attacks here, a long sword and a bite or a claw. They do have the typical magic resistance like many other fiends, and they do have one extra reaction called Vicious Reprisal. Whenever they take damage, they can make a bite attack against a random creature within 5 feet of it. If no creature is within reach, then the Abishai can move up to half its speed toward an enemy it can see without provoking attacks of opportunity. While these aren't great stat blocks and won't be too challenging for your party, they're not the only monsters that are here. Situated alongside the tent is Arkhan the Cruel, his manticore Chango, and Torogar Steelfist, his savage minotaur bodyguard. Arkhan is visiting the monument to commune with his queen and report on the ongoings of battle, and wills to master the Hand of Vecna, which came into his possession during a brief excursion on the world of Exandria. Of course, this is the tie-in to Critical Role. While you do get a lot of stat blocks here, and it could be a very interesting battle with Arkhan, Krull, Torogar, the Manticore, and the Abishai, it can actually be quite deadly. I don't believe that this is actually designed to be a combat encounter. Like many of the fetch quests here, most of the time you're going to a place trying to convince someone to give you something. In this case, you want the vial of Tiamat's blood from Arkhan. So you obviously aren't going to come in guns blazing and try to steal it from him. You probably are going to use that as a last resort. Since that's the case, I did have my group still fight Arkhan. I had Arkhan and Torogar and Krull basically challenge the group to see how worthy they were of taking this. Giving up the blood of Tiamat might be something he'd do if he knows the group is capable and formidable enough to take down the archdevil Zariel. So yeah, kind of ended up being like a little sparring session, which was kind of cool and doesn't let these stat blocks that are provided for you go to waste. Arkhan believes that he can use the Hand of Vecna to unlock the means of freeing his queen Tiamat from her prison in the Nine Hells. However, the hand is slowly corrupting Arkhan's flesh and decomposing his body on one side. When Arkhan goes to make a deal, he's going to want to cut another deal to get a good aligned creature so that he could sacrifice it. These sacrifices stave off the Hand of Vecna's disease over his body. Lulu is an ideal candidate according to the book, but I don't think that anybody's going to give up Lulu for this exchange. The unicorn moon color could also be an option, but I feel like they're going to be going through such lengths to help all these good aligned creatures, they're not going to probably backstab them at this point. Again, the other option is they can give him the Orb of Dragonkind. That might be something that he wants. If that's the case and the characters do get the blood from Arkhan, then they can bring it back to the Empyrean and get their deal satisfied. Now let's take a look at the stat blocks if we were going to fight Arkhan and his group. Now, we already talked about the Abishai, but there's also one other sort of creature that you could fight along, and that's Chango the Manticore. If you don't know much about Manticore stat block, it's very basic. They have an armor class of 14, 68 hit points. They can fly up to 50 feet in a turn, so that's pretty nice. The benefit of flight for them is they can use their tail spikes as a ranged weapon up to 200 feet. And he can attack with 3 tail spikes in one turn. He also has a bite and a claw, but none of them really do that much damage. He's really just more peppering the group from high up above. Torogar is actually quite an interesting stat block. He's a Minotaur, so he has a lot of the Minotaur abilities like Labyrinthine Recall and Goring Rush, which are attacks that he can make after a dash action with his horns. But the key here for Torogar is that he's a barbarian. He can go into a rage as a bonus action, and it lasts for 1 minute. Torogar, when he's raging, increases his strength. Obviously, his strength is better. He has advantage on strength checks and saving throws. He deals an extra 3 damage when he hits targets with a melee attack and has resistance to all normal, mundane damage. Torogar also wears a gauntlet of Flaming Fury and has a belt of Fire Giant strength, so relatively strong. He can make 2 attacks with his scimitars and 1 with his horns. They actually hit pretty well with plus 11. Most of the time, his damage is in the range of 2d6 plus a number. His scimitars do 2d6 plus 7, and they also deal a d6 fire damage. If he's raging, it becomes plus 10. And the horns do 2d8 plus 7 piercing damage, so that's a little bit better on average for damage. Torogar's weakness is truly his mental stats. He's got a -1 to his intelligence and wisdom modifiers. So if you wanted to throw up a hypnotic pattern, his wisdom score is not going to help him very much. Krull would have been with you from the beginning. Krull is the Tortle cleric who was at Arkhan's tower and brought you here to the monument. Krull's pretty tough. He's got 117 hit points. He's got an AC of 17, which is his natural armor. He has a claw and a +1 maul to hit you with, but realistically, that's not where he's going to be doing most of his damage. He's a true cleric, so he's got decent amounts of spells. In fact, he has all the way up to 7th level spells. And of course, the leader himself, Arkhan the Cruel, who is a dragonborn red variety. His Aura of Hate helps all of the fiends and undead around him within 30 feet. They deal 4 extra damage whenever they hit with a melee weapon attack. He does have some innate spellcasting. His charisma is pretty good, so his spell save DC is 17. He can cast Animate Dead, Branding Smite, Revivify, Gesh, Raise Dead, as well as all of the spells that come with the Hand of Vecna. Speaking of the Hand of Vecna, the artifact has 8 charges and regains 1d4 plus 4 charges per day. Arkhan can cast the following spells from it: Finger of Death, 5 charges, Sleep, 1 charge, Slow, 2 charges, and Teleport, 3 charges. Arkhan also wields Fane Eater, the Battle Axe. Arkhan has a plus 13 to hit with this weapon and does a d8 plus 12 slashing damage as well as 2d8 cold damage. If Arkhan rolls a natural 20 on the attack roll, the critical will deal double the damage as well as an additional 2d8 necrotic damage. Arkhan regains the amount of hit points equals to the necrotic damage dealt. Arkhan's armor class is 23 and he has 221 hit points. He's pretty nasty. And unfortunately, you don't get any battle maps for this encounter despite having numerous stat blocks, especially ones that are unique to the game, to the specific module. So just take a quick survey of Google and you could find some good maps. Obviously there's ones that you can purchase, but if you can, always contribute to the artist. Once they finally release Uldrak from his curse and he becomes an Empyrean again, then the group is going to head back to the Demon Zapper. After gulping down the Empyrean's blood to free herself from the pact, she will etch her letter of introduction to Bel on a basalt tablet and direct the characters to his volcanic lair. Next up is Bel's Forge. When the characters arrive at Bel's Forge, you'll see a gargantuan volcano dominating the horizon. Clouds of fire and ash spew from its caldera, and the air trembles with its angry grumblings. A vast multi-layered fortress has been hewn into the volcano's rocky slopes. Bel is one of the Nine Hells' greatest military minds. He's a general in Zariel's army. In fact, he's second in command, and the former Lord of Avernus. I definitely played into the idea that Bel wants some sort of revenge on Zariel or was eyeing his old former job back. So that's up to you. I talk more about that in the Avernus chapter guide. I think in general, Zariel is definitely the enemy of many people here, so it wouldn't be too far from the truth to try to play up Bel and her having this big rivalry. The Forge does have two notable features. There's an intense heat here. It does say that characters who aren't acclimated to extreme heat conditions will suffer those consequences. Extreme heat in the rulebook says that when temperatures are at or above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the creature who is exposed to the heat without access to drinkable water must succeed on a Constitution saving throw at the end of each hour or gain a level of exhaustion. So I don't know how long this encounter will last. It's mostly a conversation. If you feel like they've lingered too long or you just want to make them have one initial check, then I would say have them make a check. The DC is actually quite low. It's only 5 for the first hour and it increases by 1 every hour after that. So I can't foresee too many characters failing this, but it's something that's worth noting. There's also lava. Open rivers of lava are channeled through the forge to smelt ore and soften metal. Any creature that enters the lava or starts its turn on it takes 33 or 60-10 fire damage. This increases the damage to 99 or 18d10 if the creature is fully submerged. Now this is a keyed area, so we'll be looking at the map, but you'll see first in F1 the descent into the forge, a wrought iron spiral staircase descending into a cavernous forge. Channels of bubbling lava wind through the complex, casting fiery light over huge anvils. Chained giants with black skin and fiery orange hair hammer out weapons under the malignant gaze of a pit fiend seated on a flying throne. Throughout the forge, sparks fall like rain. So obviously the pit fiend is Bel, and the fire giants are basically his servants who are creating all of the weapons that the devils use here in Avernus. These 4 fire giants are chained, using enormous hammers and anvils to craft infernal weapons and armor under Bel's watchful eye. The fire giants do have names: Drumra, Jalt, Roska, and Zakorn. While chained, the giants have a walking speed of 10 feet, and the giants despise Bel, but they are bound by magic to do what he demands. The chains cannot be broken or unlocked by anybody other than Bel. F3 is the weapons rack. These racks contain weapons awaiting delivery to the front lines of the Blood War. They're too big for small or medium characters to wield effectively. There are 3 weapons sized for small and medium characters, and that would be a pair of Hellfire Javelins as well as a Hellfire Greatsword. All the Hellfire aspect does is shed dim light within 5 feet, and if you kill a creature with this, it turns them into a Lemure. They are reborn at the river Styx. F4 is a pool of magma. Inside this cavern you can see steel pylons and gantries keep a huge and terrible new machine suspended above the pool of magma. The machine is a secret weapon in his Cold War to overthrow Zariel. When the characters arrive here, the infernal machine is still under construction and far from complete. There's a section here about role-playing Bel. It says here that Bel oversees the manufacturing of weapons and armor for the Blood War. Though Asmodeus has instructed Zariel to keep Bel as her advisor, Bel and Zariel loathe each other and invent distractions to keep them apart. While Bel learns of the ultimate character's intentions, he decides to use them as pawns to tarnish and ultimately overthrow Zariel. Bel will talk to everybody out loud, but when he discusses plans for overthrowing Zariel, he'll actually use his telepathy so that no words are spoken. Bell wants the characters to retrieve 9 adamantine rods for him that were stolen from his forge by Zariel's spies. Once all 9 rods are returned to him, Bell is willing to divulge the location of the Bleeding Citadel. Bell suggests that the characters speak to the Sibriex that was recently captured by his spies. Sibriexes are basically hoarders of forbidden lore. They kind of look a little bit like a beholder type creature, but we'll talk more about them next. The Sibriex will know where Zariel's spies hid the adamantine rods that Bell is looking for. Bell will offer the group a barge, a ship to actually traverse the River Styx and get to where the Sibriex is located. Bell ultimately wants these metal rods because these rods are the key to opening up the Companion. The Companion, of course, has a planetar trapped inside it, and Bell fails to mention that these adamantine rods are the keys to unlocking the device and freeing the planetar. If his motives are questioned, Bell simply says, "That's none of your business. This is the best deal you'll get in Avernus. I suggest you take it." Again, only if negotiations really break down here could a fight happen. Bell will sigh, snap his fingers, and cause the infernal chains to fall off the fire giants. He promises the freedom to any fire giant that kills an intruder, prompting the giants to attack the characters without mercy. Fire giants, are pretty straightforward in terms of their attack and damage. They can use their tools as weapons, and they can push people into the molten lava. If the characters defeat the fire giants, then Bell will commend them on their victory and offer them the same deal. He will not attack them again, however, he will use teleport to bring them out of his lair. If Lulu's with the group, he may cast imprisonment so that Lulu would be, used as hostage. He promises he would release Lulu if the group brings back his adamantine rods that he's looking for. No questions asked. It's kind of weird here because Bell could teleport the group to anywhere they need, but he also offers them a boat so they could travel to the Sibriex. So it's a little interesting. He could really, I feel like, just kind of teleport them to where they need to be anyway. But still, it's fun to give the little boat ride a chance. So he'll teleport them out of his forge to the boat, and they could travel to the Sibriex. Now, the boat does have Maragons as well as Bone Devils who operate the barge, so the characters don't need to actually do that. I didn't end up having this be a thing. I let my players take the boat on their own, but had Bearded Devils and Bone Devils kind of lurking along, following the boat, keeping an eye on them, keeping tabs on the group, and seeing what they were doing. The Sibriex. When the characters arrive at this location, they'll see a floating blob that's chained to a 20-foot tall wrought iron scaffold. 2 fiends wrapped in chains stand atop the scaffold, torturing the bloated creature's flesh by tightening its chains. Demon ichor oozes from its wounds, forming a shallow pool around the scaffolding. A third jackal-headed fiend uses his bronze horn to yell loudly at the bloated prisoner in multiple languages. It sits cross-legged, about halfway up the scaffolding. Bell's fiends have captured a Sibriex. It's a huge demon and is known for its flesh-warping capabilities. The Sibriex is currently restrained by the infernal chains from Bell's forge, so that he can prevent it from using its spells or actions to escape. The demon ichor that pools around the scaffolding smells terrible and can be easily avoided. 2 chain devils named Shalak and Jank are torturing the Sibriex under the guidance of Fetch Tatter, a cruel Arcanoloth who signed an infernal contract with Bell. All 3 fiends are immune to the Sibriex's warp creature power. Fetch Tatter is using a speaking horn to address the Sibriex, treating it like an idiot child. "Tell me everything you know about," and end with a long pause as it waits for the Sibriex to answer. The Sibriex has grown increasingly obstinate. The Arcanoloth offers 3 soul coins to the characters if they can make the Sibriex talk, but it has no intention of honoring this agreement. Arcanoloths are actually no joke. They are pretty decent spellcasters, and Fetch Chatter has a ring of X-ray vision, as well as a potion of greater healing and 6 soul coins. If the characters interrogate the Sibriex, it doesn't know anything that can help the characters find the Sword of Zariel, but it does know where Bell's 9 adamantine rods are located. The Sibriex uses telepathy to talk to the party members when they come within 120 feet of it, offering information in exchange for its freedom. The characters with whom the Sibriex is speaking telepathically can detect the insincerity of the Sibriex's offer with a DC 17 Wisdom Insight check. A character can make a deception or persuasion check at DC 17 to convince the Sibriex to share 1 bit of useful information as a show of good faith. The Sibriex claims that all 9 rods were located in the crashed wreck of a flying fortress. The Sibriex won't reveal the location of the wreck, but Balkros, the imp, knows where the wreck is and can lead the characters there if told about it. Lulu might suddenly remember the wreck's location, and that can be up to you, your discretion. Let's talk about the Sibriex's flesh warping ability. If it's freed, then it could use this ability on any of the creatures nearby. When a creature fails a saving throw against the Sibriex's warp creature effect, you roll a percentile die and consult the flesh warping table to determine an additional effect. If the creature does transform into an abyssal wretch, the effect becomes permanent, and that is something that would be horrifying to have one of your PCs turn into one of these creatures. But it's not easy to do. It takes about an hour of concentration while standing within 30 feet of the Sibriex. At the end of the process, you can roll on the flesh warping table or choose one of the effects to determine how the creature is affected, transformed permanently. So after they trick or magically compel the Sibriex to divulge the information of Bel's adamantine rods, the characters set out to recover the rods from the wreck of the flying fortress. Again, really no combat here. You do get the Sibriex stat block, but really, while it's chained, there's really no combat that's going to happen. And finally, the wrecked flying fortress is the last location in the Path of Devils. When they arrive, they'll see the towering wreck in the scorched hellscape. It looks like a giant sword blade tilted at a 20-degree angle and partly buried underground. Much of its exposed hull is rusted and torn asunder. Hot wind screams as it tears through the hollow structure, and 6 giant vultures circle high above it. Climbing the outside of the wreck is not too difficult. It does require a DC 15 athletics check to do so, but characters who can fly can go anywhere they want on the outside of this wreck. The giant vultures are not actually vultures, they are 6 Vroks, which are demons. They're pretty nasty, but at this level they shouldn't pose too much of a threat. They'll attack anyone that comes within 50 feet of the command deck, though, so if you do split the party or somebody flies up, then yeah, they might team up on one individual. The lower decks are riddled with holes, allowing for easy access into the fortress's interior. You do get a map of this location. Funny enough, this is the one place you get a map of, and I think there were 2 or 3 other ones that really deserved a map more than this. But at least in this case, you're not doing a negotiation, so I think combat is ultimately expected. There are bone whelks inside the lower decks. Bone whelks are large mollusks that create an adhesive to attach skulls, bones, and other detritus to their bodies for protection. These slugs scour the wreck for organic matter to feed on, clinging to torn sections of wall, floor, and ceiling, while taking shelter from the searing winds and hungry rocks. Characters will be attacked by 5 bone whelks. They're really slow, so they can't really escape or pose too much of a chase, but if the characters do fight, they will fight to the death. When a bone whelk dies, it emits a scream that has a 50% chance of attracting the Vroks, which then they will attack the other creatures. Deep within the wreck, there's a 5-foot diameter cylindrical pipe made of iron that runs along the full height of the fortress. This pipe was designed to siphon tormented souls from the river Styx, feeding them into a 10-foot diameter cistern below the command deck to the power fortress. The pipe can be accessed by hatch on every deck except the command deck. If the pipe is ever opened, there is a 30-foot-long centipede that exudes necrotic sludge. If it hears one of the hatches open, it will sink down the pipe to try to devour whatever creature it sees. The creature uses the Remoraz stat block with these changes. It deals necrotic damage instead of fire damage, and has immunity to necrotic damage instead of cold damage. On the command deck, you'll see iron surfaces. The floors, walls, ceilings, and doors are made out of iron that has been twisted, bent, and ruptured in places. The ceilings throughout are 15 feet high. There is a light source here. Areas that are exposed to the outdoors are dimly lit by the hellish red sky of Avernus. Beyond that, the only light sources are harmless showers of sparks that periodically rain down from gashes in the ceiling. This full fortress is actually on a slant. The command deck leans at a 20-degree angle, with area W5 being the lowest part of the deck, and area W8 being the highest. The slope metal floor is difficult terrain. You could have them fall if they run faster than that or something like that, or maybe make a dexterity saving throw to catch themselves. Play around the terrain as much as you'd like, so you don't really get too much terrain to interact with in this campaign. Let's go through all the keyed encounters on the map. W1 is the bridge. Unless they've been defeated elsewhere, the 6 Vroks flying above swoop down to attack the characters who explore this area. If they explore this location, they'll see several loud infernal war machines approaching. Through the holes in the wall, they can see 3 vehicles screaming across the hellscape towards the wreck. There are 2 devil rides, one driven by Chunka and the other by Clonk. Each Kenku carries a small bag containing 3 soul coins. You also see the Tormentor crewed by Barnabas the Flame Skull, as well as 6 Madcaps and 3 Redcaps. Now, the characters should remember these creatures. They met them at Mad Maggie's place. So really, this could be a chance to reunite, get some updates. Maybe Maggie has some other words of wisdom or warning for the characters. That could be totally up to you. I would say that if you want to include this, it's really optional. You don't have to have Maggie's friends come here. You could also have this encounter be placed somewhere else in the game before they even get to Mad Maggie. Perhaps this is the thing that leads them to Maggie in the first place. Ultimately, the downside to this is the Madcaps might try to steal their Infernal War Machine if the characters have one, but honestly, at this point, they may not even be using the Infernal War Machine, they may just be using the boat. W2 is the alarm console. Jagged gashes in the outer wall allow for a hellish sky of Avernus to light this room. An open hatch in the floor leads down to the lower decks, and the metal console is plugged into the wall. If a character does flip on the switch, it's basically going to blare the alarm. You'll hear a soothing female voice through all of this say, Aj ta nos is lech is, ta kraj kanak, asmode das, which is Infernal for, you're important, promotion is your destiny, Asmodeus loves you. W3 is damaged machinery. Sparks rain down from torn holes in the ceiling, falling onto a pair of rectangular machines that have been torn from the walls. The machines now stand in the middle of the room, their loose wires sticking out like bad hairdos. The larger machine was used to scramble telepathic communications within 1 mile of the fortress, and the smaller one sends telepathic transmissions to all devils within 1 mile of the fortress. This could be repaired with a successful DC 20 intelligence arcana check, but I'll be honest with you, I don't see any reason why the characters would know how to fix this. It doesn't seem right to me, so I would just skip this all along. Maybe they just find out its intention, what it would be used for, and maybe that will also make them not want to touch it. The only way I think they could actually get this fixed is if they hired Chukka and Clonk to maybe do it because they have experience with infernal machines. W4 is the records room. It gnaws on a bone while cackling maniacally to itself. Lying on the floor near you are a pair of glass, bell-shaped horns attached to some loose wires. They look like they're removed from a pair of tall, slender metal machines standing against the wall opposite you. The null is actually not a null, it's a shape change death slot, so that's going to be fun for you to run. It's under the effects of a feeble mind spell based on the River Styx's abilities to leave a creature in a feeble-minded state. In 5 days, it gets a new saving throw to end the effect. If you want to examine the null, a DC 15 intelligence arcana check will say that some sort of magical effect has reduced it to a witless nincompoop. It eyes the characters suspiciously but does not attack them. It has no weapons but can use the bite action on its turn. Casting Greater Restoration or Heal will help the creature restore its mental faculties, whereupon the slot will assume its true form and attack. So that's what you get for being helpful. Now here, the machinery is quite important. The bell-shaped horns lying on the floor attached to the fronts of the two machines standing in the corner, neither of which is operational. Each machine resembles a vertical file cabinet covered with switches and burnout lights. A character who spends at least 1 hour taking apart a machine can discern its original purpose with a DC 20 Intelligence Arcana check. Again, you see another similarity. The larger machine was used to transmit messages to other flying fortresses. The smaller one was used to broadcast throughout the flying fortress itself. You could broadcast a message by speaking into the machine's glass bell, but again, I don't see how the characters would have the knowledge of fixing this machine. Again, Chukka and Clonk being here could help with that scenario. I could see the specific use of trying to get a transmitted message to Zariel's ship as actually quite important. When the plan comes to get the sword and perhaps go fight Zariel, they could use this as a distraction, right? Lure her to this place so that they can get to a location that they need to. Once they go for the sword, if they feel like at any point that would be dangerous or attract the Zariel's spies or something like that, they can use this as a distraction, right? Have Zariel and her group come to the fortress, answer this distress call, and head to get the sword. Or additionally, if they want to plan or get Elturel back up to the material plane, they're going to have to break the chains that are holding it there. And so getting Zariel away from Elturel will be important in the final battle. W5 is the adamantine rods. Finally, you get to the lowest point of the command deck, and the room is dark. It has a metal console that is torn free of the wall to your right. Pinned between the console and another wall is a small, desiccated winged devil who looks like it's crushed to death. In another corner, you can see a 3-foot block of infernal iron, a lock safe with clawed feet, and a 3-dial mechanism built into its thick door. Each dial bears numerals written in infernal. This safe is stuck to the floor with sovereign glue, and it can't be moved. 3 knock spells are needed to force it open, or you could set the tiles to 6, 6, 6. Yes, that is the number that they need to unlock the safe. Might as well win with 0, 0, 0. Either way, you could have your thief or rogue do a lockpick check. There's other ways to get by this without having to just have your players guess the number or have knock spells on hand. The safe contains 9 adamantine rods. If the characters make 3 unsuccessful attempts to open the safe with the wrong combination, the alarm will sound and the rocks will come to attack. The safe contains 9 adamantine rods, each one weighing 3 pounds and engraved with runes that spell out the words Solar Insidiator Lock. This is, of course, written in Infernal. Characters who are familiar with Thavius Krieg's Infernal Contract can recall the word Solar Insidiator. It's another name for the companion. Armed with this knowledge, the characters who succeed on a DC 10 Intelligence Arcana check can conclude the rods were designed to unlock the companion, suggesting that it might contain something inside. There are a couple other locations here that are Not as important, that's the Black Bell, as well as the Sturge Nest. W7 is the Sturge Nest. There are just a bunch of Sturges here that ultimately, if explored, will come through the gash in the pipes and attack the group and then eventually fly away. The last place here is the signal decks. This hall has 4 doors leading off of it. Behind each door is a miniature console with a chair bolted to the floor. These consoles have keys and function like infernal typewriters. This is where officers would dictate orders to imps that are scribing for them. There's an optional encounter here. As the characters are leaving, you can have one of the warlords of Avernus come here. You can look at this encounter in the book. You've got Bitter Breath, Feanor, and Princeps Kovic. These kind of gang leaders will come and try to, pillage or take from the group, and that could be another combat to throw in there. When the characters return to Bell with the rods, he actually looks disappointed. He actually was hoping that once they figured out what these adamantine rods were for, they would go straight to the companion in Elturel and free the Planetar for him. Again, he can't do something directly against Zariel, so he's trying to get other people to kind of put this idea in their head so that they'll do his bidding. Bringing the 9 rods back to Bell will merely implicate him in the plot to free the Planetar. He strongly encourages the characters to take the rods to Elturel and stick them in the locks along the companion's equator and see what happens. Bell does make good on his promise to reveal the location of the Bleeding Citadel, however, and he'll tell the characters that the Sword of Zariel is a good aligned artifact that Avernus itself has long sought to destroy. Bell urges them to find the sword quickly before the Bleeding Citadel is swallowed up by Avernus and the sword is lost forever. If Lulu is still with the party, she will urge the characters to recover the sword before heading back to Elturel. And so now the characters know the location of the Scab. And that just about does it for the Path of the Devils. Like I've said in the previous video, I'm not crazy about this format of going on these fetch quest after fetch quest after fetch quest. It doesn't really lead to that many combats, surprisingly, but ultimately getting through these checkpoints will lead the characters to the Sword of Zariel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. You can also hit the bell icon for notifications so you get notified whenever I go live with a new video or a live stream. You should also check out all of my live streams. I've got a ton of different games, campaigns, RPG systems. If you'd like to support the channel in a more direct way, then check the description below for links to Patreon, Ko-fi, and you can also join the channel as a YouTube member. There's some perks for being a member. It's very basic stuff. I only made it $1, so if you wanted to do that, you can get some cool emojis, so when we live stream, you can be posting them in the live chat. Again, thank you for watching the video, and we will see you on the tabletop.